Tortorella really quick, because there was something that came up with John Tortorella and Matvei Michkov that I found like at least slightly concerning. And I'm not surprised by it, but it's like, what are we doing here? All right, Matvei Michkov has been a real bright spot for the Flyers. We all knew that. He came over early, 2 years earlier than expected. He's a guy that this team views as a fundamental, core piece, franchise cornerstone type player. The coach has benched him. The coach has scratched him for a few games. He doesn't do it at home. Why doesn't he do it at home? It's because John Tortorella thinks that Matvei Michkov doesn't deserve to sit at home? No, it's probably because if ownership or the front office has actually succeeded at conveying one message, it's people in Philadelphia who bought tickets to games are here to watch Matvei Michkov. They're not here to see Garnet Hathaway or Ryan Poehling or whichever one of the goalies decides to give up way too many goals at this point, whether it's Ertz or Kolosov. Fedotov doesn't even get to play, but he's still up here. But the people are buying tickets to see Matvei Michkov. You can't sit him. Well, the Flyers play the Ducks on Saturday, and there is a non-zero chance that Tortorella could scratch Michkov from that game against Cutter Gauthier, which would be brutal, absolutely horrific if they were to bench him. And I joked at the start of the show, but Torts, when he typically benches a guy or scratches a guy in front of their home crowd, right, in front of their friends and family in their hometown, Torts likes to do the whole thing. Oh, I didn't know. I didn't realize it, which is bullshit. I would not be surprised if Tortorella scratches Michkov against Gauthier. Now, would it be a big win for the Flyers organization if Michkov goes out and puts up a 2 or 3 point night against the Ducks in Anaheim and Gauthier gets shut out, puts nothing up on the board? Yes, that'd be a big win, which is why maybe tomorrow's not the game that they sit in, because it is a big win optically if Michkov looks better than Gauthier. The other side of that, though, is they weren't traded for each other. Drysdale was the guy that you got back, and Drysdale has looked largely awful. Start of the season, he looked awful. He had a few good games when he first came off of IR a couple weeks ago. Has gone back to looking mostly bad. Not much of an impact. But the reason that I bring this up, and the reason that I feel like we are heading towards Tortorella scratching Michkov once again, is because Tortorella, prior to Christmas, said something that made me go, it's not great. Tortorella's kind of calling out Michkov. He's kind of putting a lot of the blame here on this bullshit power play not working. He's kind of putting it on the young guy again. It doesn't feel like a good thing. What are we doing, John? So I want to go to Jackie Spiegel's the one, friend of the Press Row Show and Snow the Goalie. She had this quote a few days ago, before Christmas. I think this was on Monday. This is what Tortorella had to say about Michkov. Asked about the Flyers' power play struggles, and part of Tortorella's response focused on Matvei Michkov. Here's what it was. He said, Mitch has leveled off. Mitch's game has leveled off. It's been a little bit of a struggle with him. He was very important. He was a very important part of giving us some life on that power play. That's the first part. Now, it did get worse because Torts is Torts. So Jackie, I guess, followed up with Tortorella, asking if it's because teams are playing better against Michkov defensively on the power play. Obviously with the idea that he is their most dangerous guy on the power play. And in fairness, is their most dangerous guy on the team, although at even strength, he's not quite as dominant. He says the following. Maybe, I don't know. I think it's been a little bit of a struggle for him. It's the National Hockey League. He still has a ton to learn as far as what it takes to play through a schedule. We've had a really hard schedule, and I don't think he's used to that. I'm really happy with how much we've gotten from him already in the first 35 here. We figured there'd be dips along the way with such a long schedule and travel and the nature of the National Hockey League. I think he's handled it really well, but I think it's a little bit of a dip right now. Now, there's a little bit of a positive in there, but the negative is if he's saying that the kid can't compete night in and night out or that he's not used to the schedule, then what's the coach going to do? He's going to bench him. He's going to scratch him. He's going to say he's not used to this. We think his efficacy has dropped. And the thing that he said about the power play, he kind of hones in on Michkov that Michkov was really helping us early on, but now what is he exactly? I mean, guys, what are we doing here? I keep coming back to this, and this is why I get frustrated. This is what gets me the angriest about Tortorella and Michkov and the dynamic. There is a part of me that wants to believe that Tortorella knows this guy is the golden goose. He's going to coach him hard, and ultimately that might help his development. But You can't play mind games with the kid who's the franchise cornerstone. You just can't. And you can't blame the 19, now 20-year-old for the drop-off of the power play. Rocky Thompson has been in charge of this power play unit for years, and it has been a dog shit, bottom-of-the-barrel kind of power play unit. And in most cities, a head coach would have moved on from that person. They would have put a different assistant coach in charge of the power play. They might have actually fired an assistant coach and brought someone else in to rework it. Now, you could also have the thing where you say, well, Russ, is this just a situation where the Flyers don't have a lot of talent and that's why the power play is so ineffective? Yeah, there's like a little bit of that. But like, you did just extend Travis Konechny to a lot of money. That's one guy who should be performing on the power play. Travis Sanheim, sure, it was by Chuck Fletcher, but like was given a lot of money to be a quarterback on that power play unit. You went and traded Cutter Gauthier, your best domestic player, your best domestic prospect. You traded that guy for Jamie Drysdale, who was also supposed to come in and be able to be a quarterback on the power play unit. And that hasn't worked. So is it that all these players are failures, or is it that systemically what is being installed by the assistant coach who runs the power play just doesn't work? These are questions that I have, just in general. And nobody seems to be able to answer them, because I think what's happening here is you're seeing the head coach sticking up for his assistant coach that he's just unwilling to move off of for whatever reason. And the easiest thing to do is to point at the guy who at 19 years of age, now 20, like recently turned 20, has cooled off. And that other teams are now starting to account for Matvei Michkov, where they weren't in the beginning of the year because he was a rookie and maybe it was beginner's luck. Now they're starting to actually plan against Michkov, and his efficiency on the power play and how many points he's putting up has dipped a bit. That's it. Like, that to me is a concern. It should be a concern to you as well. So if you're a Flyers fan, this sure as shit better not go the wrong way. If you're a Flyers fan, this like little power struggle that you're going through as a team between the star player going forward and the head coach who won a cup 2 decades ago, this can't continue. And I've now started to see the discourse online that would certainly kind of point you in the direction that some of Tortorella's biggest supporters in the fan base have now started to say, maybe he's not the right guy to coach this kid. Maybe the head games aren't something you should play with the future cornerstone of the team for the next decade. Like, maybe that guy, maybe that's the one that you don't play head games with. Maybe you do that with Scott Lawton, who's a bottom 6 forward. Maybe you do that with Morgan Frost, who you think is ultimately going to be part of a hockey trade, a 1-for-1 trade for a change of scenery guy like a Shane Wright. But you don't do that with the franchise cornerstone. You don't do that with the kid that your organization bent over backwards to go pick up from the airport when he came over 2 years early, who like they've included on all of the branding and all of the advertising around the team this season. Maybe that's the one guy you don't play the mind games with. When the Torts apologists are now starting to come around to like, hey, this isn't great. Tortorella has 1 year left on the contract after this year. Who's going to be here longer? I don't know. Let's think. Could it be Matvei Michkov, who is the centerpiece of the team? Or could it be John Tortorella, who's gotten older and again hasn't won jack shit in 2 decades? I don't know. Who do you think is going to be here longer? Who's ultimately more important to this franchise going forward? And I've seen a bunch of people who have now touted this idea. They've trotted this line out there. Oh, well, you know, the culture is important. The culture, blah, culture. Because look what's happening with the Rangers. They're a really talented team. Is Lavi wearing out his welcome? Blah, 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 blah. The culture. The culture's fine, and you can make the culture argument. But, like, if a lot of the team that's here isn't going to be here when you flip the switch, then I don't know how much the culture really matters. You don't want to instill a losing culture, but do you really need John Tortorella at this point playing mind games with your best prospect in decades? Do you really need that? Is it going to long-term help Matvei Michkov reach another level? My simple argument is no. You could just as easily hand the reins over to Bradshaw. And like, look, the Flyers organization is going to have to decide at some point. Are they fine with Torts being Torts, or are they going to finally step in and like be his boss? Like, at some point, is somebody going to remind him that he works for the organization doesn't work for him? Like, is that going to happen or not?